Sorry.
Thank you. We are recording this and you'll be able to see it probably mid-January on our website. It's actually a great resource. So I want to welcome everybody who's here. This is our last meeting of 2024. Our next meeting is not until February 18th. And at that meeting, we have Lisa Hamlin speaking. She's the recently retired Director of Public Policy at HLAA. And I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about public policy, but mostly she's going to be talking about service animals. She has a hearing service dog, and she's going to talk about just having a dog, where you get them, other animals, but she's also going to discuss your rights under the ADA with service animals, which is very important. A lot of people really don't completely understand that. So I want to make sure everybody has the accommodations they need. Does everyone able to see the captions? If you want captions in a larger format on a separate screen, we have stream text, which you can access through the chat. And I believe we also have Spanish subtitles available if anyone wants to hear this discussion in Spanish. I am going to turn this meeting over to John Taylor. He organizes this annual music program, and he is himself a former professional musician, a trombonist. And I believe, John, you played for us one year, right? At one of our meetings.
I played very briefly. It was right before New Year's, and I think I played Auld Lang Syne.
Memorably, though. I remember it. Yeah. So John was a trombonist. And these programs, which we have every December, always about music and hearing loss and their relationship, are funded by generous donations in John's honor. So I just want to say, John, thank you again for setting this up and for making this possible. This meeting is always one of the highlights of our year. So I am going to turn this over to John, who will introduce our guest tonight, and he will moderate the Q&A at the end of the presentation. I have to leave early, and I don't want anyone to be insulted. I have to leave early. So over to John, and one more reminder, this is being recorded. So thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Catherine. Just one comment I mentioned to Russ briefly. The reason we do this in December the music program is in honor of Beethoven's birthday. I'm sure that most of you know that Beethoven was himself deaf, and yesterday was his birthday. So we have a special treat tonight. Our speaker, Russ Palmer, is a deafblind folk singer, guitar player. As part of his presentation, we will be treated to excerpts from his recently released extended play CD, Loving Touch. Dr. Palmer is an international music therapist and vibroacoustic therapy practitioner who has been involved in academic projects within the European Union, in Finland, and in the UK. His research interests include a CI-based music perception with a focus on the vibrosensoric experience. Russ has led an extraordinarily interesting life. He was born severely deaf. At 21, he was diagnosed with Usher syndrome, which also caused him to go blind. At age 30, after a career as a computer analyst and programmer, he studied music at the Dartington's College of Arts in the United Kingdom. This was followed by a year in Norway, working with teachers of clients with special needs on how we feel music through our bodies. His studies at the Sibelius Academy in Helsinki, Finland, qualified him as a music therapist. And in 2024, he was awarded an honorary Ph.D. from the Faculty of Education and Psychology at the University of Oulu in Finland. In addition, he is a fellow of the British Interplanetary Society, which may be of interest these days around New Jersey, where we've been seeing a lot of drones and there's been a lot of conjecture. Tonight, he will be assisted by his wife, Rita. So this is just a brief introduction. In the course of his talk, Russ will give you more details. When he's finished, we will have time for some questions. You can use the raise hand feature which is probably in the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. Please try to keep your questions brief so that others can have a chance to ask their questions. Thank you. And Russ, you're on.
Thank you, John. Thanks for the lovely introduction. I hope you can follow my voice. I will try not to talk too quickly, as I know all of you, most of you probably have a hearing impairment like myself. I have 2 cochlear implants like this one, Medel, and the first one I had was in 2004, and the second one was 2011. Now, I was born severely deaf, as John pointed out, and if we go to the first slide, it may be very appropriate. John, whoever's doing the slides, could you show me the first slides?
David.
David, sorry.
Yeah, that is your music in my CI Live, and now Wood for Deaf School.
And to the deaf school, please.
Yeah, that is there.
Yeah. Now, you probably see me there of age about, oh, I don't know how old I am. 5?
Yeah.
5.
64.
I have one of those body aids, not very practical, especially when you're playing the guitar or trying to put your coat on, you get a rough noise and so on. Even one occasion, the hairdresser chopped my lead off, which wasn't very clever. So yes, I was at deaf school between the age of 4 and 7 because for those 4 years, my parents had a problem trying to convince doctors there was actually a hearing problem. So I went to what we call an oralist school, no signing at all, which back in the 60s, bear in mind this is 1964, which is a long time ago, and we weren't allowed to use signing, but it developed my spoken language. At the same time, my teacher felt I had more challenges going to a hearing school. So from the age of 7 onwards, I went to a hearing school. I had the bullying, etc., being the only deaf kid there, and my parents noticed I was having a tough time, and so we decided to have a look at hearing aids behind the ears. So up until 2004, I had hearing aids. Now, I'm going to focus tonight on my cochlear implant musical perception of how I've gone through this very long, extensive musical journey. And it's been a challenge, I must say, because I'm also blind now. Since 2015, I've lost my vision due to the Usher syndrome. And it's been a very big challenge to use iPad, iPhones, and so on, because you can't see anything, you can't see photographs, you can't read music even. So when I'm composing music nowadays, it's a quite different way of doing it. So, as John very kindly pointed out, I had my first career in computers, but music has always been as a hobby. Since the early days of primary school, I was singing in a choir, and my violin was the first instrument at 8. But because I had what we call a bilateral schizo, it meant I had very little middle and high frequency. So I had a lot of problems trying to follow the violin. So I then turned to the piano at the age of 10 and then did classical music. And at 14, my father bought one of those beautiful Lowry organs, which is American, I believe. Beautiful, 2 manuals, lovely speakers, rhythm unit and bass pedal, playing with all your hands and feet. Quite a challenge as well. So I taught myself to play that. And one of the influences, I must say, has been a lot of American artists, especially in South America, the Carlos Jobim, who does the famous bossa nova music like Girl from Ipanema, bum, ba-da, be-da, bum, bum, ba-de-da, that sort of stuff. And when you're playing that sort of music, you really got to feel that rhythm. And through the speakers coming through and the rhythm coming through the unit, playing the bossa nova rhythm, I used to feel the rhythms. And I used to explore different sounds, different what we call tone color, to try and explore the different high frequencies, middle frequencies, and so on. Even though I had a high frequency loss, I sort of learned to listen. And I have to say, when I went through that process, I developed what we call my residual hearing, which was very useful.
Do you want the next slide, please?
Yes, next slide, please.
This is now the auditive and sensory perception musical experience from 1960.
Now, what this shows is how my how my musicality changed, if you like, how I perceive the environment around me. I think from the early stages, I was looking at visual aspect because I didn't get my hearing aids till I was 4. And I can remember seeing the Beatles on Top of the Pops for the first time. And my father bought me the She Loves You single. And I had this toy guitar going, she loves you, yeah, yeah. And I could follow that they were mouthing, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I could follow that. So where there's repetition of words, it became very handy for me to understand what the song was about. And then moving on, I think.
Hearing aids, 64.
Yeah, so when I had my hearing aids in 64, that changed because I now had more sounds, more soundscape. And when I had my first hearing aid, first time I was in London, and all I could hear is this traffic noise, which is very, very booming. But I used to adjust the volume down so it wouldn't be too loud. And I learned to listen to people, what they're saying.
And then you have a developed body senses.
As my time went on, this from what?
Yeah, that is 91.
In 91, that was a very dramatic time because because of the Usher syndrome, both my hearing and sight started to get more and more difficult. Usher syndrome, for those of you who are not aware, is like having tunnel vision, night blindness, and deafness. So it's looking like down a tunnel. You can't see the sides, so you have to scan around. And of course, when this gets worse and worse, it gets cloudy. And so it becomes quite challenging at the time. So your whole body sense change as well. And that's what I noticed in 91.
Yeah, and then 2004 cochlear implant.
The first time I had a cochlear implant, my sound perception changed. I was so afraid, actually, of not being able to continue music. I used to play the piano very well at one time. And what I noticed with the piano, it became very honky-tonkish in sound, which was very frustrating because it just didn't sound right. But I also realized when I started to pick up the guitar, I started to hear those high and middle and high, low pitch sounds for the first time, much more detailed. Then I went to concerts. I started to recognize how much detail of sound I was hearing. But I had one cochlear implant in this ear and then the hearing aid in the other ear. And one of the problems is trying to get the right balance. Because if you have the hearing aids too much bass, the sound is at a distance. And if the cochlear implant has a very sort of more treble sound, you're going to get a slight imbalance. So I had to really get onto my audiologist to say, can you please balance in such a way so I'm not having this imbalance effect? And I did my first CD actually in 2003 before what I call BCI, before cochlear implant, Reflections. And that's a unique recording because that's with my hearing, if you like, I was wearing hearing aids, but I couldn't hear my voice then. And I give you an example of one particular song called You and I used to sing like this. You and I, walking happy together. It meant I had to try and slide into that note. After the cochlear implant, it started to change. And it became much more interesting. You and I, walking happy together. And in 2011, it even got better. I started to have the vibrato, which I'd never done before. So the whole concept of how I perceive music changed. Is anything else on that, Rob?
No, that's then done, that one.
Right. Could we have a next slide, please?
And there you have tactile sound system.
Now, during my change of career, because I was only 30 years old when I had to give up my computing career, and I was going through divorce and so on, so life wasn't really going well for me at that time. And I can also say that I was suicidal a couple of times. I'm still here because I didn't know where I was going. But 1 year of doing cabinet making, because that's all I could do, even though I had all these dangerous machines, I was interested in antique furniture. And I thought about becoming a furniture restorer. But the problem was my vision was changing. And I'd done this as a hobby and I thought, not going to work. And I still have this dream to become a music therapist. Could I do it in the UK? No. And it wasn't until I went to Norway and then meeting Rita in 91 from Finland that I actually had the opportunity to explore this new journey of music therapy. There's a lot of information about music therapy. I think Nordhoff Robbins, probably one of the most biggest pioneers in America, particularly and around the world, and also in the UK. So that journey took a long time. It took 2 years going to Dartmouth College of Arts, where I was introduced to a world of new music, gamelan music from Indonesia, where you had a big gongs, you could feel the vibrations coming through. And Brian Eno, someone from Vangelis, and other people as well. It started to expand my whole compositional ideas and so on. So going to Norway for 1 year was an interesting challenge, where I was introduced to a special music floor, what we call a vibroacoustic music floor. If you can imagine lying on your hi-fi system and feeling the music coming through the floor and surrounding the whole, being transferred around the room, it's a wonderful experience to feel that through your body. And that made me aware, oh, we can maybe feel the different vibrations from music through our bodies. And I noticed that some of the children were actually started to become much more relaxed. They weren't so nervous, they were much more calm. Even daily living skills improved, which was a marvelous thing for the teachers.
So where do you just say, Russ, that you could feel the vibration on your body? Can you explain that?
Yeah, for example, what we call a vibrosensoric approach, you're using both your hearing aids and your body experience. So low tones are more in the lower range, middle tones in the middle part of the body, and the high frequencies in the upper part of the body, including the fingertips and even through your hair. And I'm still trying to explore into this, the academic side of how we can actually measure this in some way. So this is what I found out in 94, 95, and it's still a long journey. But the tactile sound system was when I went back to the UK, I was involved with the university project, working with a whole hospital, where they had a snoozling room called Whittington Hall Hospital. And they wanted to have a special music floor. So we designed this special music floor, which actually won the Millennium Award in 2000 when the big Millennium Dome opened. And that was a very interesting project, and that's with Romper. And I don't know if it's being distributed now, but I do know that some of these floors are still being used. Could we have a next slide, please?
Yeah. And now you are there on the side, your guitar and your hat and implant. Yeah.
Now, this is a very typical picture of me when I'm doing a performance, because I use a hat.
Yep.
Could you pass me that, please?
Yeah.
The reason I do that is because I didn't realize until later when I was doing performances on stage that if you, for example, can you hold on? Yes.
Yeah, I'm just having the other ones.
Sorry. Yeah. If, for those of you who use hearing aids or whatever hearing aid device or even hearing, if you put your hands over your ears like this, your voice actually sounds clearer. But the trouble is when you're on stage, you've got this big acoustical environment, so the sound gets lost and you can't hear yourself and you can't hear your band members, which is a big challenge. And I've found over the years that having different styles of hat, for example, I use this one mainly.
Other way, yeah.
Sorry. Because it's got a nice rim, and it's a little bit different, probably like an Indiana Jones style hat. But most importantly, I can hear myself. I can hear myself when I'm in or out of pitch. And it also allows me to make sure I can follow my other colleagues if they have to be a certain, like the drummer behind me or the bass player a little bit away from me or whatever, or my fellow colleague Juha, who also plays the guitar. But sometimes when you go to a live venue on, say, an outside centre, it's even more challenging because you've got open air. So using something like this hat, which is an Australian one, funny enough. Yep. All right. Now you've got a wider brim. And you want to cut down the background noise of the audience talking, other background noise. So you might decide to have different style of hats according to your needs. And this can be great fun for kids who are also trying to get familiar with their new cochlear implant.
Did you find an article about that?
Yes, I think we did actually. If anybody's interested, there's an article about this, talking about the hat perception which people might find useful.
It's on your website.
It's on my website. It's www.russpalmer.com, which is on my slide.
Yep, you can.
So this particular picture is just typical example. The reason I'm wearing dark glasses is because I can't see. It tells people I can't see, and I also use a cane as well for getting around. And it's nice sort of fashion sort of thing, and it's practical in that sense.
Would you ask next slide?
Next slide, please. The last one, I think this is.
Yep.
Now this is back in May time when I received my honorary doctorate. As you can see, I'm all dressed up with a top hat and tails and this lovely sword, which is an incredible honor for me personally, because I never thought I would get anything like this. And it's for all the 30 years of work I've been doing, both in the music side and also the social haptic communication, which you may notice Rita here has given me some body language or any sort of communication if I'm not able to follow something. Again, there's more information on the website if you'd like to look at that. Yeah. That's all the slides for now. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have your equipment there to explain?
Yes. For those of you who are not totally aware about the cochlear implant, I use this remote control, and this is probably about 20 years old actually, but it's very tactile and very useful for those of you who have a visual impairment, such as myself. I can feel where the buttons are. I have 4 programs. And they like different filters. Like now it's a very quiet environment, so I use one particular program for that, or program 2 if it's very noisy, or program 3 if I'm listening to music, or number 4 if I'm performing, because they change at different frequencies. Now you can probably imagine my audiologist probably enjoyed me sort of coming in, sorry, I need to change the program to another type of sound, because I wanted to get the best quality sound I could out of the device. So I was always going there with my CD and my portable iPad with a JBL, just to get the sound right before I was leaving the place, because once you get out of that door into the wide world, it changes completely. And one of the interesting points was that sometimes hearing aids and cochlear implants, they have an automatic level where it changes according to the sound being produced. And when you're a musician, that's the last thing you want, because you want to know if you're in or out of tune, or if you're going to be in the right balance, if you're too loud or too soft. So tell your audiologist, please make one particular program that would just stay the same, or can you do it a whole device?
So why did you have your own music there?
Well, again, it's familiar, because during the process of transition from hearing aids to cochlear implant, you have to remember I was born severely deaf, so I never heard normal sound. Probably some people are thinking, well, you speak too well. I always had that challenge with the professionals saying, well, I've learned to hear, learned to listen. And again, that's thanks to my mother, bless her. She used to teach me the S's and the T's and the P's and treat it like a game. But when I started to re-listen the old music, such as Beach Boys, Glenn Campbell, John Denver, Don Williams, Frank Sinatra, and others, I started to sing along like a karaoke to get in tune with them and to start to learn the different songs. And one particular song I do remember was a famous one called King of the Road, like trailers for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, etc. So I used to just sing along to that and then use that with a guitar and play away. It's a very long process, but it works.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, I've also been using different devices, such as this, which is a Bose Soundwear neck speaker system. You put that around your neck, and you may not be aware, but you have 2 speakers here, and you have the controls on the back for switching on, a power control and the connection to the Bluetooth, and then you have the volume up and down or changing tracks. And this is very useful, or as Rita would tell you, she thought it's very useful for if I need to do the washing up when I'm listening to music at the same time.
So why that is good? Because it's on the neck, so
it's on the neck. You can feel it on your shoulders, and also the sound source is coming up to the hearing aids or implants, whichever device you wear.
Yeah, and we're talking about the JBL. If you just want to show.
Yes, again, this may be of some use. I don't know if you've heard of a JBL speaker. This is a very nice quality speaker that I use a lot for if I want to check a particular music track, if I'm playing the guitar, trying to learn a piece of music again. I find this extremely useful connected to the iPad. And these days, it's amazing what you can do. And it has a tactile buttons too.
Why does it give you vibrosensoric experience?
And it does, because you can feel, if you hold it in your hand, you can feel it going through your body. If you hold it on your leg or if you hold it on your chest. And for those children who have learning disabilities or other complex disabilities, it's extremely useful as well.
Yeah. Okay, Russ, what is your rhythmical perception when you were a child?
Yeah, can you just remember?
A child following rhythm was difficult.
Yes. When I was a child, I noticed it was difficult to follow certain rhythms. And what I found is better if you're in a choir to be between two people who have good voices, so you can actually listen to them and tune into them. And I felt my competence wasn't quite there. I felt very insecure. So I felt I needed to have that sort of extra support where possible. But as time went on, I started to develop this. And after the cochlear implant, this actually got better and better, which I'd never thought possible. And this was particularly the case when I did recordings of the Warm Summer Days CD when I was singing on the tracks. In fact, I think we can probably play a sample of one of those tracks. Is it possible to play a sample of Hunter's Cry?
David.
Mm-hmm. David, thank you.
These are the slides, and then trying to find the music there. That was right, yeah.
Yeah, that's one.
Let's do that again. And playing.
From the corner of my eye, a lonely road, I see an eagle flying high. My heart yearns to find a shelter in the storm. Fireplace, a friendly voice so soft and warm.
Hey, Dad. Thank you. Now, that was done in Norway with my producer, Jon Rossen. I think his name is actually on my notes, from Norway. And we actually started recording here in this very room, slightly different, back in 2000 and whatever it was, 3, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And it's my own music and all of the music I've written on the Warm Summer Days. And I sung on 7 of those tracks. And we had to do the guitar tracks first. And I remember doing this. This is before I had my implants. And trying to follow the rhythm was quite tricky. And I know Jon has to put through the headphones the drum beats so I could hear and make sure I was following the right way. And of course, as some of you know, when you're doing recordings, it's not easy to know exactly where you are. So I had to really make sure I'm sort of not singing, because it was a microphone, acoustic. So we had to be very particular trying to get that rhythm quite correct. And then Jon must take this to Norway and have professional musicians. And then we had the whole thing. And I re-recorded the vocal tracks later. But it's great fun. And the first one came out in 2004, Reflections. But then when I had my implant, I said to Jon, what's that? What are the percussion sounds there? Why don't you like it? I said, I love it. I just didn't hear it. And what I noticed, I started to hear all these wonderful percussion, high-pitched instruments. And one particular concert I went to see was Brian Wilson, actually, because I love the Beach Boys. And I went to see Pet Sounds when he did that for the first time, before the implant. And then I also heard it after the implant. And when I heard the good vibration, I'm giving you good vibration, the words just came so clearly. I thought, really? I didn't realize that all those words were what the story like. And I remember one particular song by Glenn Campbell, who I have great respect for because he's a terrific guitar player. And I have to admit, I'm very influenced by Glenn. And one particular song he used to sing when I was young was Galveston. And I heard this on the radio one day and I said, what's that, Galveston? To me, it sounded like a cloud of sun, because I just couldn't follow those words. And it wasn't until I got the music later, oh, Galveston. And I'm sure as hearing impaired people, we always get this misunderstanding of words from time to time. So, yeah, it was a very new learning curve for me to learn to sing in a sort of more sort of professional way, which I've never done before.
Yeah. Do you like to say anything about sound perception?
Yeah.
How did it change with your CI? You are hearing your own singing voice.
Yeah, I think the biggest change there was when I started to sing. I never thought I'd be doing performances because I only wish I was 20 years younger, because I started to do all this lovely music and so on, and I started to hear my voice in a much better way. Like I said earlier, the cochlear implant sounded much more closer to your actual hearing here on the ear, where the hearing aids is always at a distance. You never really get that full, very clear sound. You miss out the consonant sounds in some cases. It does depend on the hearing levels we have or don't have in that case.
How long it took you to learn to hear the piano again?
Well, that was an interesting journey because as I said earlier, when I heard the piano before the cochlear implant, it was a certain way, and I used to play a lot. I could still see. But after I had the cochlear implant, it just sounded awful. I just didn't want to play the piano. I'm sure some of us has been through similar experiences. We just don't hear the sound that we used to hear. So trying to relearn that new sound takes time. But it wasn't until maybe 2010, 2014 or 15, I started to hear the piano sound as it should be. And of course, my vision started to change and I couldn't see what I was playing. I was not a very good, I didn't discipline myself to read the music as it should be. I used to bend the rules a bit and just put my own interpretation. But there again, that's the way it was. So now I have to play the piano in a slightly different way.
Yeah. And then do you like to do the guitar example?
Yes, I think might be a good chance now to demonstrate on the guitar. So we're going to move to another part of the room.
Yep.
Just 5 minutes.
Yep. Yep. It's your hat. Yep.
That's cool.
You need to do everything by feeling it.
Yes, it's a challenge. It's a little big challenge sometimes. Am I right?
Yes, you can just come here a little bit. Yeah, you are fine. And we can check the sound. Yes, and you want to check the distance?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, hope everybody can hear me. Now, when I started to learn guitar, I started to sort of look at chords like G, C, D, very basic chords, which is fine. And we also did the 12-bar blues, that sort of stuff. But I wanted to also explore finger picking. So one of the first finger picking things I did was something like this. Try to remember the kind of September when life was snow and rose. That's a very famous song by Nana Muscuri back in the 60s. Try to remember. And with that lovely little arpeggio, you start to learn these chords. But I had a lovely guitar teacher called Nigel Patterson, who actually met Paul Simon from Simon and Garfunkel back in the 60s. And he was actually assisting Paul. And of course, Paul started to use this very complex thing called what we call a claw hammer. Now that's it take a while to learn that. And I used to use this with like Glenn Campbell's number, Gentle My Mind. It's knowing that your door is always open and your mouth is free to walk. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag put up and stashed behind your couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds, ink stains that have dried upon some line. That keeps you in the back roads by the rivers of my memory. That keeps you in the gentle of my mind. So I started to do that, and I explored other ones such as Don Williams. You're my bread when I'm hungry. You're my shelter from troubled winds. You're my anchor in life's oceans. Most of all, you're my best friend. And he did some lovely guitar numbers, and that's where he started to do this country stuff. Now, sometimes when you have a hearing impairment, if you want to know the best place to feel where the vibrations are, the guitar is great because you're feeling through the sound box, yeah, but you're also feeling on your fingertips through the neck. And I know the strongest point is on the head part. So sometimes when I have some deafblind people who can't hear or see anything, I say, well, put your hands on my guitar here and you'll get the best sound. And you can also use balloons as well. Now, if you blow up a balloon and play music, you can actually do this at home on your own personal hi-fi system. And you'll be surprised how strong those vibrations can feel, either holding it with the palm of the hand or on the fingertips. And if you go away from the speaker source around the room, the sound will travel through the room.
Yeah. So Russ, how are you tuning the guitar?
A lot of people are, yeah, that's a challenge actually, because all right, I'm going to do this literally. Now that's out of tune. I can tell that's out of tune.
How do you know?
Because I'm feeling the vibrations here.
Where is here?
On my chest. So, and also because I've tuned my ears to understand, okay, that needs to be tuned up a bit. It's too sharp. So I have certain chords that I play to help me make sure my guitar's in tune. And one funny story I had was when there's a blind friend of mine who actually wrote two of the songs, the lyrics. And she said, can you tune my guitar? And I said, hang on, I'm hearing impaired. Yeah, but you do it so much better. And I was very touched when she said that to me, because it's taken years. I don't use any instruments to read, I just feel it. But the only problem is it has to be quiet. So it's very challenging when you're in a very noisy environment. I usually get my colleague Juha to tune it for me.
Yeah. Okay. So when you are on the stage and you are playing with Juha, with the other band members, how do you find the microphone, or how about the speaker system? What is your way of solving this problem?
Well, when you have a microphone stand, I sometimes make sure I can feel the foot of the stand with my foot. So it tells me, okay, that's where the microphone stand is, but now I need to find the microphone. And I usually use my nose. And there's been a couple of times when I move and I've sort of been slightly away, but I have to try and tune in because I can't use the what we call the in-ear monitoring so well, whereas a lot of other able-bodied hearing people can. So I really have to use my sense of hearing. And also the hat also provides a very useful guide. As long as you've got monitor speakers, then it's helpful.
Yeah. How do you position them?
Well, again, they need to be in such a way so my better ear is on one side. So I just make sure I keep the sort of balance from the right sort of way.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, I mean, some of you may not realize this, but Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, and I hope you won't mind me mentioning this, but he's actually deaf in one ear. And when you consider how challenging that was for him through the Beach Boys, and yet he produced this wonderful music. And if you listen to analyze his music, it may be because of his overlaying and dubbing, that's why he can get that sort of true sound, so he can hear it himself. Again, it produces beautiful sounds.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to go back to the...
I'm now taking this off. I'll come back at the end and do something.
Yeah. Do you want to play your Loving Touch?
Yes, it might be.
Yeah.
It might be a good idea, David, to play my Loving Touch track from the new album, if that's okay. Thank you, while we just get reorganized.
Okay. Here is the... Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, that's lovely. Now, what I found, certainly in the last, I suppose, 10 years, because in 2014, I started to have this idea of trying to explore guitar soundscapes. And Juha is my friend in Finland, who's a very, very good guitar player. He plays a 12-string guitar, and I play a 6-string guitar. So I had this idea of dum, 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 dum. And I sort of give him the ideas, and I said, okay, we'll improvise on that, and I'll do the chords and so on. And between us, we got that sort of lovely sort of sound. And it's exploring soundscape. All you heard there were just two guitars, but it produced a beautiful soundscape. And I know a lot of people have said that the Loving Touch CD helps them to relax. You can have 25 minutes of relaxation. And it takes you on a journey. And if you play a sample of a second track, Song for Lost Friends, Now, on that one, that was really, because that was done during the COVID time, we lost a lot of friends, including our parents. And it was a very difficult time. And I just wanted to reflect on those special moments of people we used to know, but have a positive feeling at the end. And this is what really got me going on this instrumental stuff. And the last track, Voyager, I just play a quick sample of that. Again, it's just me on the guitar, but it just, if you can imagine, you're looking at the Voyager spacecraft, it's leaving our solar system and going into interstellar space. And in the middle, it's a little blue planet Earth. It makes you realize how vulnerable we are. Could you play Voyager, please? Thank you. So that just gives you an example of the sort of soundscapes I explore now. And to me, it's a new journey. And I'm hoping to do a new second instrumental sometime in springtime, because it's a fascinating journey. Because I can't see, I just have to create these new sounds, just exploring with chords. So yeah, that's why I started to do all this. And it still continues to be a fascinating journey.
So Russ, when you are making a new piece, like a guitar piece, so what is your method to remember, perhaps? How do you remember, or how do you put down your notes? Because you can't see them.
No, I know that's a big challenge. Like on one occasion during the pandemic time, my colleague in Finland and I was here in the UK with Rita because we couldn't go anywhere. And I wanted to learn a new song, which is actually one of Don Williams' songs. So she managed to get the chords for me, and I learned the chords, and then she found the words, and I started to learn. So it was a very stage-by-stage process, using the both somewhere and on FaceTime. Okay, tell me what the chords are, right? I've worked that out, blah, blah, blah. And I just did it stage by stage. But because I can't see it, I have to do it very, very slow manner. So it does become a challenge when you're trying to learn new songs. So these days, I think trying to create your own music from out of nowhere makes it more interesting and more challenging.
But you're recording those sessions?
Yes. I'm recording each session because I'm always very critical about my own playing, making sure that can be improved or that can be changed and so on. Because I need to be able to listen back. Because sometimes, when I'm sure some of you know, when you're creating your own music, you're not always aware of doing that first take. And when you get to take 5 or something, what was the first take like? So by going through those takes, sort of gives you a picture of the whole thing. And I remember one of my piano teachers saying to me, whenever you're trying to play music, and I'm sure this is the same for a lot of people, try and think of a picture you're trying to create. And it's a very visual thing, but at the same time, you're trying to represent that sort of interpretation of the picture through music.
So when you're on the stage, if you want to know if it's a C or D or whatever, how do you do that?
Yes, I remember when I was I used to live in Scotland, Aberdeen, and I was only 15 at that time, and for some reason I used to play double bass, and they wanted a bass player, and so I went to the gig, and I said, "Oh, where's the music?" "Oh, we don't use music." "Oh, okay. Well, I'm hearing impaired." "Oh, no problem. We'll just shout the chords." I said, "Well, how am I going to know it's C or G?" "Okay, well, C for Charlie, G for girl." So that's what I had to pick it up, and it was a big of a challenge to do that. But it's great fun.
Yeah. Okay. So Russ, do you think that when we go back to your childhood, because your father was a musician, so you always have music around your house?
Yeah, we did, and he used to. He used to be he was a professional musician for a while, but then he had to retire from that because he got stage fright, bless him. But he still became a semi-professional musician, playing double bass and singing. He had a wonderful voice. And I actually encouraged him to sing on 2 of my tracks. And he wrote the words for both of them. That's Dreaming and If You Go. We did it actually in this room here. And he just did it. in 2 takes, bless him. And he's almost whispering. He's like a crooner, like Frank Sinatra, Matt Munro style of singing. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks to Dad and for his support, because I couldn't have done it otherwise. But mind you, he was a bit of a perfectionist. And every time I was singing in or out, he'd say, "You're not singing right," or whatever. So he's quite critical of something. And I felt a little bit overpowering by that. But it was a good lesson for me to learn, because I think it's important to have a good standard of music whenever you do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Russ, if I'm now the last moment, it's just that your last 60 years and your auditive perception, you have learned almost every 10 years, like new sounds.
That's very true. And whenever I go to audiologists, I always say to them, "Look, I can't hear this sound here or that sound there. Can you increase the high frequencies and so on?" And every time they change that map, you have to get used to that new sound. And it takes a bit of time to do that, and it's a challenge as well. But what my advice is, never give up. Always try and ask the audiologists, because some of them do tend to focus on spoken language. I know all about spoken language, yes, but I want music. So I'm very concerned I would not be able to enjoy my music again. But I've been one of the very lucky people, being able to do all this music now, and in such a way I never thought possible.
Yeah. So, Russ, what is your last Deafblind Blues idea for the audience?
Yeah, I can do that.
It's now 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shall I just?
Yeah.
Okay. This last song, which is still haven't been recorded, I did this one called Deafblind Blues, and it's a sort of rock, a sort of bluesy thing. I'm a man who can't hear, a man who can't see, but this doesn't matter, 'cause I feel the blues. Oh yeah. Singing the deafblind blues. Baby, I can do this. Oh, deafblind blues. So, thanks for listening. And please, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask. Thank you.
Smiling. There's a lady now on the screen smiling. Holly.
Well, thank you, Russ. That was just terrific. It was wonderful to hear your music, which is wonderful, and to actually see you play the guitar. And many thanks to you for all of that, and thanks to the lovely Rita who assisted you. I think the Beatles wrote a song about the lovely Rita, didn't they?
I did actually, yes.
So,
you got 2 songs.
we can now open this up to questions. So if you want to ask a question, use the raise hand feature at the bottom, and it's probably in the reactions or reacts tab. Any questions? If there's nothing, I will start it out. As someone who is a musician and has an implant, that you mentioned that you have one dedicated music program that does not suppress the dynamic changes, which is of course a big issue for music. Does it do anything else differently about pitches? I know that for me, one of the issues with the implant is it doesn't get all the way down in the bass register.
Right, that's interesting, because for me, I've been very lucky because I've been able to pick up all the register from low to high in such a way I never thought possible. Although when I had just the cochlear implant and hearing aid, that was a challenge, because I was getting more bass on the hearing aid than I was with the cochlear in that early stages. But as time went on, I noticed that sort of started to cover all the frequencies, because there are only 22 channels in each ear. So it's a very small range compared to 45,000 hair cells you have in an able-bodied person who can hear properly. So it's a very small range.
Yeah. Russ, do you remember when you said that the music is not right, and then you did go to check that what they have done, all the channels, and then they said, "Oh, we haven't activated your one channel."
That's right. And I was a little bit annoyed, because I'm missing here.
Speaking from my experience, you can have all the channels, but 22 channels cannot equal, the tens of thousands of hair cells in your ear.
No.
But what I've been impressed by, in my case, and it sounds like you as well, the brain is a remarkable thing. It adapts and it learns these things. But as part of that adaptation, did you do any specific auditory training when you got the implants?
It was all self-taught. Because nobody could really nobody really had any idea how to do music. And I know my colleague Stina in Finland still is baffled by how I do this, but I do know that on one or two of the songs, especially in the early stages, I had problems trying to hear the E minor chord, for example. And I could never figure out why. And it's maybe because I wasn't getting that extra bass frequency, like you say. But when that got adjusted again, that was much better. And I had certain problems trying to pronounce certain words like love, or I used to sort of sing in the back of the throat. So you need to learn to open your vocal channels more. And I say this to a lot of children, particularly who are getting used to an implant. I think when we were very subconscious about singing out of tune, we sort of close our voice channels up. So we need to explore our voices and not feel afraid. Okay, I make mistakes, and I've done this on stage. I remember one time when my colleague Yuha and I were playing, and he said, "Russ, you're in the wrong key. You're on the wrong key." Am I? Oh, sorry, didn't realise, because I couldn't hear that particular chord. So we just stop and say, "I'm sorry, folks, I've got to do this again," and I make a laughing joke about it because nobody's perfect. And I remember sort of recording of Elvis Presley one time, and he made a mistake. It was lovely to see him being on that natural level. So everybody can never be 100% perfect. But I think if you can't go out there and sing or whatever, or do a performance live, then I know AI is now, artificial intelligence is now available where you can get everything completely correct. But that's a little bit, I don't know, it's interfering with nature. It's not being natural,
I'm not seeing any raised hands, so I'm going to continue with my questions.
Sure.
It's particularly interests me that you've chosen to focus on vocal and guitar. Piano is a whole
Hello,
different thing.
I
You press
had
the
my
right-
hand raised.
Oh, they're all raised hands.
Okay.
I'm not seeing them on my screen. I'm sorry.
John, there's several
So who has-
there are several raised hands, John.
Okay, then David, you wanna take this?
No, I'll wait till you're done. I'll wait till you're done.
No,
I just want to let you know I'm next.
my hand is not one of them that's raised. Actually, Dana, would you like to go?
But if you're seeing raised hands, David, please call on them because I'm not seeing them on my
Yes,
screen.
I will. Dana, would you like to start?
Yes, my name's Dana Simon, and some of you might know me, but I have Usher syndrome type 3, and so I really enjoy your talk and very motivating, and I'm definitely going to check out your website. I could hear your music very well over Zoom, but when you're in person listening to a concert, sometimes it's harder to hear the notes in person. So I'm interested in what you were saying about wearing a hat. That helped you hear better in person?
Yes.
And what kind of hat was it, since I couldn't see? I was able to see, and actually was a librarian here, but my vision got worse, and so now I can't see. And I'm also in the visual arts, so I have to do my artwork from memory now.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm looking for new things to explore.
Right. Yeah. Well, if I describe to you, I don't know if you remember the film.
Yeah, I'd like to describe the hat. Yeah.
Sure. It's a felt brim, like a felt hat, and it has like a traditional sort of trilby style in the middle, quite tough felt, not very soft, not too soft, because and it's had a wide brim, so it sort of covers almost not to the very edge of your shoulders, but halfway between.
So it blocked the back of your head. Is that it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and whenever I was singing, I always tilt it forward a little bit to make sure that I'm not picking up sound from the front, so I can hear my guitar and I can also hear the monitor speakers.
Yeah. So the idea of wearing a hat is to screen out the background noise and just hear from the front?
Well, you need to experiment, I think. It's probably the best way I can say to you. If you go to a hat shop, you can be a nuisance and say, "I'd like to try your hats."
Okay. Sounds good.
And just say singing or say, blah 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 blah, or whatever you do. They'll probably think, "What's this silly woman doing?" But don't worry about it. And so I'm exploring new hats. I need to be able to hear myself. I want to know if that's better sound or a not so good sound. Yeah. So you need to. That's what I did. And I believe you me, I know Rita gets sick of it. I have about 5 or 6 hats.
Russ, 10 or 15.
Do I? Between 2 countries.
Yes.
Does it work in a noisy restaurant too? Because I know some restaurants blast the music, and I was trying to use my Meta glasses. I got these Meta glasses that you talk to, similar to Alexa, and the music was so loud I couldn't talk to my glasses. So,
Oh dear.
So then
Meta Ray-Ban glasses, they're called.
Well, I don't Ray-Ban glasses.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. But I just for interest, I have Usher type 2.
So
So-
David, I've now changed my screen and I'm now able to see the questions. So the first one I'm seeing on my screen is Al Chen, who I would like to introduce and also mention
Thanks
he's
so
the
much.
very generous donor of the annual scholarship that the chapter gives, and want to thank him for his generosity. So Al, you got a question. I know that you write music as well.
I'm just going to close the lamp. Now it's better.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John, for your kind words. I also want to thank you, Russ, for your incredible story. It's so inspirational.
Thank you.
And I'm blown away. I wanted to ask you for your advice. John mentioned I write some music, which is true. I've written 14 songs, and they're being produced and also reproduced. But the one thing I've noticed is when the producer makes the sample for me to listen to, I can't, it's all noise. It just comes across as noise. So I'm not really able to understand it. And even if I had a second producer make the same song, everyone can tell it's so much different than the first song. It just comes across as noise to me in both instances. So my question or advice that I'm asking you for is when you were, before you had your cochlear implant and you were just with hearing aids with the profound hearing loss is what I have, and you made your record with your producer, how did you decide, okay, this recording is good enough for you to be produced? Because you mentioned at some point when you got cochlear, you could hear more, etc. Did you just rely on the producer, or were you able to feel it, or what? And how would you advise accordingly? Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting question. Did you say you have hearing aids or cochlear implants?
Hearing aids.
Hearing aids. Okay. Yes. When I had hearing aids back in 2002, 3, I think it was, when I was doing the first recording, I had to wear headphones, and the problem was as you know, when you put headphones on, it starts to whistle. So you need to turn the volume down a little bit to stop the whistling, or move the headphones in such a way so you can both hear what you're singing and what's coming through the speakers. Because when we listen to backing tracks, we need to hear the backing tracks at the same time. And that's the challenge. And I remember one time when I did one of Rita's song called Rita's Song. And there's a line in there that goes, "This is a song," just like that. This is a song. And I couldn't hear those S's. And I was using my radio microphone in front of a microphone to hear those damn S's. And Jon, my producer, said, "Don't worry, just go ahead and sing it. This is a song." And when I had the cochlear implant, I didn't need that at all. I was able to do it straight off. But there are ways, I think, if you've got a very understanding producer who will listen to what you need, don't be afraid to ask questions. And, you maybe get some sort of support somewhere and flexibility. I know Jon, my producer, was very, very helpful because he was also a teacher of the deaf, and he was teaching at the same school that I was there for 1 year. So I was very lucky in that sense. But yeah, just make sure you get when I had those, every time I did a recording, I asked him to do a CD for me in those days. And I play that CD and listen to it and then tell him if something needs to be adjusted. And we have a very, very good cooperation. These days, of course, we download the music down to your playlist, and you can either use your connectors to your hearing aids or Bluetooth. The only problem with Bluetooth, I find, is the quality doesn't always come over so well. And I prefer to have a natural acoustic sound, like I said, with the JBL speaker. And I have a very old-fashioned hi-fi system, 2 speakers, an LP player and a cassette deck, CD deck, and an amplifier. And I find that sort of sound helps me to hear the whole thing. And I position myself in such a way to make sure I can hear that sound. So it's above there coming down to me like that. I hope that helps.
Thank you,
Okay,
Russ. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gabriel, you're up.
Thank you so much. And Russ, it's I was fortunate to hear you play and speak over the summer. And once again, wonderful job. You were absolutely amazing. My question is about, when you mentioned Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, mixing things in mono. And what you said was like, to hone in on the true elements of music. And my question is, if you were a producer and if you're behind the mixing board, what would you hone in on to get to that true element of music? Like what is important to you if you had complete control of the mixing board?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I
realize it's easier said than done. So sorry about that.
But you're quite right. I think when I know John, my producer again, used to say to me that he would have 2 types of speaker systems in his studio. He would have what we call the source speaker, which is almost mono, as the sound recorded as you get it. And then you add the second part, which would be the sort of reverb and stuff, which gives you a different, more depth sound. And I think record producers obviously need to be able to hear to make sure that in the true source of sound, there's no any sort of clips or breathing things or whatever, unwanted sounds. So you need to take those unwanted sounds off. I'm not quite sure about how it's done now because everything changed. Bear in mind, this is just over 20 years ago, 25 years ago and so on. I believe that's what they do. But I don't get involved in any recording tech. The only thing I do say is that I always make sure I'm able to listen to what I've just done, just to make sure if I need to do another take before we go on to next, so we don't waste too much time, because recording time is expensive.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, Arlene Romoff is here, and I know that she's written books about hearing loss. So what is your question for our speaker?
Okay, I'm really thrilled to be here. Hi there, Russ. Music is my thing as well. And I want to tell you an experience I had since I wrote the books, okay? And I want you to know what can happen with your brain and music, and maybe you can use this information. Okay, before the pandemic, I went to the Metropolitan Opera, okay? And I sat in the dress circle. I have never been in that first balcony area before in any theater. Okay, even with 25 plus years of cochlear implant experience. Okay, the overture began to the opera. Okay, and my heart sank because it wasn't loud enough. All right, I can just manage. All right, well, with a little bit of time, not a lot of time, it started becoming louder. All right, and not because it was louder, it was coming closer, because I was actually quite far away. So then it also became clearer, and the instruments became separated, and then it became the overture that I had been expecting. Nothing changed except I was sitting there and my brain was figuring out what was going on. And I've never expected that. And I'm telling you to expect that, because I think you understand this stuff is such a brain thing. That brain said, oh, you really want to hear what's so far away? Oh, why don't you tell me? All right. And it became, that's what I heard now. And so I'm sure you can use that somewhere in your exploits, because this was after 25 plus years of what I thought was, oh, I know everything. Not.
Thank you very much for sharing that. If you could send me your book information and details, it would be lovely to read up on that, because I'm fascinated to know other people's musical perception, because I think it varies from person to person. And like you clearly demonstrated there, a similar thing happened to me, I think, when I went to listen to Holster Planets in the Albert Hall. And the positioning we were there was slightly different to where we were before. So it does make a big difference on location of where you're located in the auditorium. And of course, some auditoriums are better than others. So it's really luck of a draw in some cases. But if you have a regular auditorium, then you find your way of trying to get the right position. But yeah, you're quite right. You do get this almost like separation of the frequencies. And thank you very much for sharing that. Great.
Okay, thanks so much. And I'll forward that information. Thank you very much. It was great meeting you.
You too.
Next up is Ruth Bernstein, who is a member of our board and always has words of wisdom. And I'm sure she has some interesting questions as well. Ruth?
Russ, I want to tell you I'm blown away. And I will never again complain about having a hearing loss. One of the things, I'm going way off here, but I saw some pictures of astronauts in back of you. Was I imagining things?
Yes, you're quite right there. Yes. I've always been interested in space exploration, and that's one of my favorite hobbies. And over the years, I sort of built up this little collection. Unfortunately, I can't see them, but I do remember them. Yes.
Thumbs up.
Well done, and I thank you for sharing your experiences, because all of us with hearing loss understand how frustrating it can be. And you seem to be able to punch your way through, and it's a wonderful thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your lovely comments.
Madeline, I think you're maybe new to us, so go ahead with your question.
Hi, Russ. Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline, and I am an audiology graduate student currently in my fellowship year at the Cochlear Implant Center at NYU. So I am a cochlear implant audiologist in training, and I'm asking this question on behalf of my dear friend Katie Berg, who put it in the chat and just let me know that she needed to leave a bit early, but she is a cochlear implant researcher and fellow musician and audiologist as well. And our question is, what do you wish that audiologists would know more about to help you with programming your cochlear implants for music? And I'm kind of following up with that with how can audiologists improve our communication with you about music?
Very, very interesting question. And I think the most important thing, because bear in mind, I had my cochlear implant done 20 years ago. So a lot has changed since then. But I do have to say there are still different manufacturers who have different types of implants. Some manufacturers have a very deep sort of the device that goes into the skull goes very deep in the air. Others are a little bit shorter and so on. And I think audiologists need to listen to the individual's needs. We are all aware that spoken language is the main important factor, of course, I know that. But if we are very interested in music, we want to be able to enjoy the musical experience, what we've had before, or if we haven't heard before, we want to take on this new journey. And it is possible, but some audiologists perhaps don't have an interest in music. Some do and some don't. And I think it's just cooperation together. If we can try and music therapy can also play a role, I think, in the rehabilitation process. If you had a music therapist on site who can actually explore the different soundscapes, different musical instruments perhaps, or different pre-recorded music samples to see what they can follow, what they can't follow, and trying to get the best possible frequency range. on the maps. That's probably the best advice I can give. But I was very lucky. I had a nice guy there who said I was a very high frequency geek. When he, Russ, you just love these high frequencies. I said, no, I've never heard them before. I need to hear them. But I'm not joking. I can tell nowadays between playing an LP and playing a CD, and the differences in quality is amazing. You know, you get much more depth with an LP analog type sound compared to the CD sound, which is more compressed. And it's something I've learned to do. And I think this comes over time. And it's coming back to listening. So it's I think there needs to be a section there on listening skills, developing musicality, developing listening skills through either hearing aids or the implants, and trying to get the best possibility.
But Russ, you were also singing there.
Well, I was, yes. I mean, I was just just going singing along with my music through the iPad or something, or the speaker, or I just just making sure I can follow to see. But it's very difficult if they're not musical, because they may not be able to understand that. So it's important I get that sort of same sound that I'm used to, or if I need to modify it, fair enough, I need to learn to hear that new sound in a different way. Yeah, well, thank you for your question. Good one. Cheers.
Our next question is from David Landsberger, who's also a board member who, for those of you who don't know him, does research at NYU on cochlear implants and in particular on music perception. David?
Hi, Russ.
Yeah.
There's so many things I could ask you, but the thing that pops into my mind, I'm very impressed with your singing, and I'm wondering, I'm a little bit jealous of your singing. Perhaps I should phrase it that way. But I'm wondering, as you sing, how do you know the right note? Are you listening and correcting as you go along? Is it muscle memory or some combination of the two? And then a second very related question is, how does your singing voice change, if at all, when you take your implants off? Maybe that's a question for Rita.
Yeah, I can actually demonstrate that if you like.
Yeah.
If I do one of my songs, which I haven't actually played to you yet, but Come Back to Me, what I'm going to do is to sing. I'll do it with my hearing aid implants on first.
Yeah.
So, come back to me, I need your love. Now that's what I normally do when I'm singing that song. Now if I take it off, come back to me, I need your love. I have no idea what it sounds like, but I can feel my vibrations on my chest and through my throat. That's all. So yeah, it's trying to tune the body at the same time, but you do need that sound. And I suppose, like I said, developing your useful hearing, or in my case, I don't have any hearing left at all. So it's trying to use your sound that you're hearing through the implants. It does take a lot of practice and a lot of pushing and shoving and exploring. But I do know a couple of friends of mine said, you have the ability now to, if you go out a little bit out of pitch, you can put it straight into pitch. You can hear that more than you've ever done before. So I guess it's been a long period of change, getting used to that. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Very.
But I think you're also new to us.
Oh, sorry.
And you're muted.
Second.
John Chen, you're on.
Okay.
John, next one, asking question.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Trent, it's you, Trent. Go for it.
Okay. Hello, guys. I'm Jim. I'm currently an undergrad student majoring in communicative sciences and disorders at NYU. I'm also an undergrad assistant at Davis Lab, and I'm a bilateral cochlear implant user. I'm actually a prelingual implant user. I got my first implant when I was 2, which was really early, and therefore I feel like I may have some really different music experience because the electrical stimulation is the only input that I got during my lifetime. So I personally, when I'm listening to the song, I'm always really struggling with the lyrics part. Like if I can't get the meaning of the lyrics or understand the lyrics, it really distorts my music perception, and which makes me prefer the pure music. Pure music, I usually listen to orchestra. Like if there's some music with lyrics, it's not my favorite. And so curious, from your perspective, how will you perceive the vocal part of a song? Like, will you think it as a type of instrument or a separate part from the notes?
Oh, interesting one. Yes, orchestral music. If we take, for example, probably like something like Dvorak New World Symphony, which has a beautiful line. Da, 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 da. Now that's played by a cor anglais. Now, for those of you who are not quite sure what a cor anglais is, it's one of those funny looking, it's an oboe type, part of the oboe family, but it's what a lower range. It has a more circular thing at the bottom. It has a lovely sound. And if you listen to the two different instruments side by side, an oboe and a cor anglais, for me, a cor anglais has a much more mellower sound. An oboe is a little bit sharper. But for some people, they can't hear that difference. So I was really surprised when I had my first implant. I was able to hear some of these, but it wasn't until the second implant that had a more stereo sound system, I was able to hear these differences. So I think there's a lot to be said about how much sound are you actually hearing, because the hearing aid wasn't functioning well enough for me to get this full sound. It was all distorted, which made it very unpleasant. So that's why I decided for a second implant. But yeah, I did notice I was able to hear so many different aspects of percussion sounds. And even some of the music I used to play, it wasn't until I had the implants I realized, oh, I didn't realize they had a sort of high frequency bells coming through there, and I can now hear them. So it's all that familiarity, trying to listen and listen and listen. I can't overstress that. I think there's a listening factor here, trying to educate your brain that particular sound.
And how about if there's vocals?
Well, if there's vocals, again, the phrasing of the words, that's a challenge for me when I did my music for the first time on CD, because I wasn't quite aware. And it wasn't until I had a little bit of voice coaching to get the breathing right. I still don't breathe properly when I'm singing anyway. So I really had to struggle with that. And I know when I had my vision, I used to have these little lines, right? Separate this word here, make sure you sing it like this and like that, because I was totally unfamiliar about phrasing. And phrasing is very important. And I noticed when I started to listen to singers, how they sang their songs, it's a hidden factor, and it's something that everybody can pick up just straight away, or many of the people can. But when you have a hearing impairment, you miss out on that. So you have to relearn how it sounds again. So it's a very sort of two-way process. So that's a new experience for me, listening to vocal music. And I'm really going back on this sort of 60s, 70s style, because that's the music I enjoy particularly. Some of the later music these days tend to be perhaps on one level. I mean, I'm not very keen on that music, but it has, some people love it, fine, but it's not for me. But I like music to be melodic and be able to hear the words and also have the meaning of a song. I maybe just prefer, I like slow music as well, because it has more sort of depth to it. It's much more difficult to achieve as well.
It's also easier to hear.
Yeah, I mean, if you take my Warm Summer Days, I think we got a sample of that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, sorry?
You did it already.
Yeah, I did that. No, not Warm Summer Days. That's quite challenging, because warm summer days passing by, you have to hold that and so on. It's quite a challenge to do that. So you need to sort of work at it, but it can be done. Yeah.
Patty, thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we're about out of time, and at the same time, we're out of questions. So that was perfect. Anyway, thanks again to Russ and Rita for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
And there will be a video of this eventually, and probably in a few weeks will be posted on YouTube. And the link for that will be on our website, which is hearinglossnyc.org. I will also probably post it on our Facebook page. So it will be available, but it may take a few weeks.
No problem. Please.
Just a reminder, as Catherine said, we will not have a January meeting, and we will resume February 18th when Lisa Hamlin will speak about service animals. So on behalf of the board, I would like to wish all of you happy holidays and a wonderful new year, and we look forward to seeing you in February. Good night.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Ruth is saying thank you for an inspiring program, Russ. And Rose is saying thank you. This was insightful. Happy holidays.